Welcome. I'm Evelyn Rudy.
And I'm Paul Shackman.
And this is Santa Monica on Stage, where we talk about the people and venues that make the city of Santa Monica the cultural destination for the performing arts.
Today we're talking to two solo performers, kicking it off with Shelley Fisher and her show, The Hebrew Hillbilly.
Then later on, we'll meet Stogie Kenyatta and talk to him about his show, The World is My Home, The Life of Paul Robeson.
Well, we've got a lot to get to, so let's get started.
Everyone has a story to tell, but what makes our first guest special is the pure uniqueness of her upbringing in the South as a member of the Jewish faith. She tells her story with humor and a great sense of style. I'm thrilled to welcome back the Hebrew Hillbilly, the down-home diva, Shelley Fisher.
Hi, Evelyn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Shelley?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back. I really do appreciate it.
Well, we love having you, and we want to talk about you and your show. And from what I understand, you are, of course, a consummate performer. I know that, having seen your show.
Thank you.
And you are a financier, and you are also a culinary master or mistress. And how do you juggle all of those together and put those all together and become as fabulous as you are?
Well, as Mae West would say, I had a lot of experience with balls. Oh.
You're juggling the balls, and later on we're going to get my co-host here, Paul, to juggle for us.
He's cute.
He juggles
Yeah,
too.
He's cute. I like him.
He juggles those balls.
And you wanted me to answer these questions?
You're a cook?
Well, I like to cook under special circumstances, especially if I have a cute man to cook with, because I actually created a TV show called Fork Play. It's about food to put you in the mood for love, and it's about couples getting together to cook these fun, healthy, sexy recipes for romance, and that's a whole other show. But next time I see y'all, I'll bring you some homemade nookie cookies.
Oh,
Paul guaranteed to make you play hooky all night long.
Is that right?
That's it.
All right. Well, I got a food question for you.
Go ahead.
I was just in the South, and I had some fried chicken that I wept. It was absolutely wonderful, and I love Jewish cooking as well. How do you marry the two of those?
Boy, that is a fantastic question. Well, my mama Frida was an amazing cook. I swear she could do many, many different things. That she was kind of like you, Evelyn, and that she was, well, I guess she's at least the second world's great actress. She's the world's greatest actress. You know, she was famous, world famous before she was 5 in the series movie called Eloise, or TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I didn't get to see it, but I've certainly heard. She's great. Okay. So now, to answer your question.
Please.
My mother created fun recipes, like one of them is gefilte grits. Okay. You can only get gefilte grits down south. Okay, and we're always recreating it because, you know, some of the ingredients, grits is an odd food. It's hard to make it good. But my mother could make anything taste good. Now, she did specialize in fried chicken and latkes every Friday night. And she was able to marry Jewish cuisine because she was of the Jewish faith and still is in my heart and soul. And, well, she's with me every day. But you need to come down south, honestly, to experience the world's greatest barbecue. And my mother was the master of the world's greatest barbecue. Now, I don't know whether you know this, but you probably don't know it either. When you're down south, or in life in general, anything that's forbidden, you want to have it. But the smell of pork barbecue, I'm telling you, I don't want to say it's better than sex, but it's pretty darn close. Okay, so my mother...
Can you hear my stomach?
Well, let me tell you.
Mine too.
Well, what you don't understand is that it's true, and I'm thinking about it right now. When I would come home from school and I would smell barbecue, I knew we were having pork. And I go, Mommy, is that pork? She says, no, we call it Jubacue. So, and this is a feature in my show, which I sure hope you'll come see. Because
Nothing better than the
Of
kosher pork.
course. Sholem Aleichem has a story about that. That was when, in former times, when Jewish children were sick, they had to be fed ham because ham was stronger and more healthy for them to get well, but they weren't allowed to eat ham, obviously. So when the children asked their grandmothers, "What are you giving me?" the answer was, "Another kind of chicken." And that was a very famous sentence that people would say because that's the only thing they could do. So I've got a quick question for you. Well, it's not a quick question, it's a question.
Sure.
Where did the Hebrew hillbilly come from? What made you decide to take all of these exciting parts of your life and put them into a show for all of us?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first of all, the name Hebrew hillbilly is authentic. Being a little bit different down south at the time that I was born, just after the earth cooled, it was not popular to be really any kind of minority, and things have changed. Of course, there's always progress to be made. However, I went to school in the first grade, and my first grade teacher called me up to the desk, and she says, "Are you one of them Hebrew hillbillies?" So it stuck. Of course, my mother took immediate action, especially when I came home singing "Jesus Loves Me," and she did have a fit, and that is in my show. And she asked me what I was doing, and I said I was practicing my solo for the Christmas show. Well, the next year we had a solo about Hanukkah, because I think people have to take action at appropriate times, and this story is about my life, but it's about everybody's life, and it's not for Jewish people only. In my opinion, it's a musical celebration of diversity, dreams, and determination to never give up, no matter where you are in your life, because there's always the possibility that something great can happen for you. And if you walk around, with your head hung down and like, this is as far as I'm going to go, you may as well put the dirt over your head. I always say get into the groove or get into the grave while you got the choice.
So when you were a kid and you did this Hanukkah show, were there other kids that were Jewish where you grew up as well?
Well, it was not a complete Hanukkah show. What are you, crazy?
Well, no, but you had a Hanukkah song that they allowed you to perform. Now, were you performing it for anyone else that was Jewish?
Well, there was a few Jewish kids in the
They were the Hebrew hillbillies.
That's right. We had a small band of Hebrew hillbillies. Great question, Paul. And like dreidel songs, so forth and so on. The interesting thing that I think maybe some people don't know is that many of the great Christmas songs were actually written by Jewish songwriters such as Mr. Irving Berlin wrote White Christmas, and many others. They saved their best songs for Christmas. And when it came to Hanukkah, I had a little dreidel. I mean, it was a little song, but at least they included it, and we appreciated that. So, all in all, growing up in Memphis, Tennessee was a blast. Not everybody, had a bad attitude. More than anything else, people had to label you, whoever you were. And everybody even had a nickname. Like the guy who was president of our synagogue, his name was Bubba Lipschitz. Now, people think I'm joking about it in my show, but I was in Memphis, Tennessee. They go, I know him. Bubba was at my show because you had to have a nickname. And maybe it was especially for the Jewish people, so we sounded less ethnic. Like there was a man who owned a big pharmacy. Last name was Burson. Why would they call him Leaky Burson? I don't know. But everybody had a nickname down south.
Bubba Lipschitz.
Shelley,
Yes.
what would you tell someone who decides they want to do a one-person show of their life?
First of all, don't give up your day job because you're going to have to fund it, okay? And you do and have to think about that. I mean, I know that you and Chris, the artistic director, your co-director and spouse, may I say that, of many years, have constantly honed not only your artistic craft, but finding ways to keep the dream alive and the nonprofit amazing contribution to this community, the Santa Monica Playhouse. And you're going to need some money. So if you just come out here, even if you're in your 20s, maybe, Okay, more than likely, your dream can come true in due time, hopefully not posthumously, but you better be prepared. It's going to take time and money and lots of love and energy. So I would say to anybody who wants to pursue the solo musical genre or the solo play or anything in theater, live your dream, don't live in a dream. Use Evelyn as your icon because she is working around the clock.
Well, I think you use Shelley as your icon because
Well,
she
you.
has an
Bless
awesome
you.
story.
Bless you.
And she knows how to share it so that people are inspired.
She had me at barbecue.
Jubicue.
It's so good to have had you here
Thank
with
you.
us, Shelley.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, as always.
Stick around, folks. Shelley's going to give us a taste of gefilte grits with a special performance. We'll be right back.
Riding a bicycle can seem like child's play.
But only if you're playing indoors.
Riding in the real street has real consequences.
Play it safe. Ride by the rules. Cars and bikes need to play together.
Here to sing the title song from her show Hebrew Hillbilly, which you can also find on her CD Rockin' in Memphis, please welcome back Shelley Fisher.
I'm just a little darling, Southern Jewish princess, and I love to sing that good old rock and roll. Raised up on gefilte grits, specialize in Hebrew hits and other kinds of funky kosher soul. Now some say I don't look it, 'cause my nose ain't got no hook it. I kinda sits there just as Gentile as can be. That don't mean I don't believe. Got a tree in Tel Aviv and a feeling in my heart for Israel. Born out of a matzo ball, y'all. Got a darling southern drawl. Proud I got the South inside my mouth. Living down in Dixieland, Mommy called it Shixieland. Fried chicken and latkes every Friday night. Always used a kosher fork till I smelled forbidden pork. Barbecue brought me to my knees. It may sound a little silly, I'm a Hebrew hillbilly from the Mississippi Delta in Memphis, Tennessee. One day I said to a little girl, Mommy called her Shixie from Dixie. Gentile girl from the South, I said, honey, you're my sugar in the cup. She just smiled real sweetly and said, why, thank you. You're my sugar in the cup, too. Oh, they. Born out of a matzo ball, y'all. Got a darling southern drawl. Proud I got the South inside my mouth. Now, it may sound a little silly, I'm a Hebrew hillbilly from the Mississippi Delta in Memphis, Tennessee. Howdy!
Care packages give hope while you're away fighting battles. But what happens when battles follow you home? JVS Veterans First helps returning soldiers transition to civilian life with services such as peer support, career counseling, and job training.
JVS Veterans First can help. Own your honor.
Visit jvsla.org for more information.
Paul Robeson was an extraordinary performer and political activist. His story was one of a fighter that lost so much for what he believed in. Joining us now is Stogie Kenyatta, a solo performer that tours the world telling Paul Robeson's story with his one-man show, The World Is My Home, The Life of Paul Robeson. Welcome, Stogie.
Welcome, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I remember the first time I was introduced to Paul Robeson was hearing his version of Old Man River, and I have to tell you, every time I hear that, I get chills. There's something deeper than just that voice, no pun intended, that there is a power and a pathos. I am curious how you were first introduced to Paul Robeson and his story, and how that affected you.
Well, I learned of him in Brooklyn, New York, and he was just the most unique of all of our heroes. We've had entertainers, we've had civil rights activists, we've had lawyers and people who work in social justice, and Robeson was all of them combined. He was basically the paradigm for African American success. He succeeded in all the things that African Americans were prominent for throughout the century, and which was athletics, entertainment, law, and social justice. And he was top of it in everything. He was one of the few left and right brain people we had, and which is why the Library of Congress named him one of the 50 most intriguing people of the 20th century.
Wow.
And how did you decide that you wanted to do this one-man show about him?
Well, it actually came quite accidentally. They say there are no accidents in God's universe. Robert Guillaume, James Earl Jones did the Broadway version, which was written by the late Philip Hayes Dean. And he did a Paul Robeson, which was a 2.5-hour one-man show with a pianist. Well, it was really a two-man, but because the piano player also had some lines. And it had around 18 songs in it, and it told a story, but it told it in recall. After he'd retired, I did not want to go to Carnegie Hall, but they were honoring me, so I said, fine, I'd go. I was, and so James Earl Jones did him, and the whole thing. It was a wonderful play, and Robert Guillaume, who did Benson at the time, was going to do it for Black History Month at one of the colleges. They had hired him. But then he got Phantom of the Opera to take over for Michael Crawford, and he was going to Broadway to do Phantom. So he couldn't do it, so they were shopping around for other actors, and they had a few in mind, and someone suggested me, and they brought me in, and then they decided that I can do it. And then I, of course, do not sing, and while he's a bass baritone, I have the voice of a girl, and I don't have. I mean, I fake it when I sing and I do the show and I speak like Paul, but as far as that, and I certainly was going to sing 18 songs, and I didn't think that they did, and I didn't think those songs translated, but I did know his story. So coming from a screenwriting background, graduate, and I decided I rewrote it. But I rewrote it with the most watershed moments, and I opened it like a movie, because you're taught in screenwriting that the first 7 pages, you have something spectacular to grab the audience and hold them in and the whole thing. And so when I studied the story and I saw that as a 15-year-old boy, he was a runaway slave from the Robeson plantation in Raleigh, North Carolina, Harriet Tubman held his hand and brought him to Philadelphia and on the Underground Railroad. And so I opened with that, the slave escape, and instead of when the stage light comes up on stage, I come running out the back with dogs barking and the whole thing, and the spotlight follows me, and I run on stage and then dive down stage center, and I'm breathing like a runaway slave, and I open, who that hiding over there in the bushes? And so it was a real, eye-opening, the whole thing. And then after the narration and something with Harriet Tubman, we go to blackout, and then I speak during the blackout while I'm changing into young Paul, and I open, and you meet him at 5 years old. Wow. And so that was my thing. So I rewrote it differently, and I didn't know how it would go because I wrote it in a vacuum. I had one actress who I'd worked with before that I trusted, that I'd just done quite a few plays with her and her sister. They directed. So I did it for her in her living room 3 days before the opening, and it was a smashing success.
Well, let me ask you this, because you had told me earlier, we were talking, and you had said that you performed this at a lot of colleges and universities.
Right, over 300.
Wow. What is that like when you know that the people that you are engaging are much younger and often not familiar with the story at all? I mean, how was that for you?
It's easy. It's like theater. It's like everything else. Shakespeare said there are really only 6 stories in the whole world, and so basically they have universal themes that carry throughout every story, the love. I wrote a romanticized version. Mine is a love story. The world is my home. It's an international love story about this son of a slave who came up through the harder times, but his love and compassion for humanity and his fellow man is what propelled him and advanced him through everything. So there are parallels in today's life for everybody, you know, and so it goes, they're universal stories, which is why when Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet is still being played out today, no matter how they may call it something else. I mean, it's like, you know, even in porn, I would imagine that there's still some semblance of, you know, that, or West Side Story, or, you know, and all of these themes, these universal themes. So even though the kids don't know it, they respect the performance, they respect the story, and it's educational because it shows them the journey of a nation, of a people, of humanity in and of itself, you know, because as you look at it, you're amazed, you know, because there's a portion in it where Robeson says that the world had moved further into darkness. Because as I tell the story, it's a history lesson, you find out that every 18, 15 years, all the leaders of the great country in the beginning of the century would get together and say, hey, here's an idea. Why don't we all have a world war and let's everybody just kill everybody? World War I was so bad, they called it the war to end all wars. Then around 17 years later, what do you think they did? They said, hey, who wants to do this again? This war again.
They said it's so much fun, let's try it a second
right.
time.
And they did it again. So by the end of World War II, you had 96 million dead. And of that 96 million, around 67 million of them were civilians, the people who didn't want the war. So at the end of that, the world was weary of war and bloodshed and pain and suffering. They needed entertainment. But everybody was too busy fighting, so they had nothing, except that tiny village in Harlem, New York, and that cultural movement known as the Harlem Renaissance, where they had all those brilliant artists and entertainers, and Josephine Baker, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Fats Waller, U.B. Blake, Jack Johnson, social intellectuals, W.B. Du Bois, Baldwin. And they flooded the stages in nightclubs and cabarets of London, Paris, Geneva, Switzerland, all over, and spread this new music and this gaiety and this thing, and it was just like, it was amazing. And so you had Louis Armstrong coming on stage in rural Paris, and you know, and cabarets in Geneva, Switzerland, and people who had never seen blacks before, and they were like, they thought they were animals. They would say, and initially in Paris, he would come on there with this, you know, singing, and Satchmo would be sweating. You know, he'd carry his rag with him because you're in front of white people in 1943, and they were lynching him back, and they took him off the lynching rope 3 times in Louisiana. You know, and Satchmo would be there, you know, and they say, get him off the stage. He is sweating. He is an animal. He is not handsome like Duke Ellington or Count Basie. He is, get him off the stage. And then Louis played for him, and he sung for him, and they threw rose petals at his feet. And what it did was it created a new black identity. And they would say, the music would move them to such a degree, particularly the Jews. They loved jazz, and Europeans, they adored jazz music, and they embraced it to such a degree they were like, but wait, if that music could come out of you and you could write it, that's God speaking through you. And if God speaks through you, then He made you, you're human. And it allowed them to see a common humanity in someone which they had nothing in common before. And so when Robeson said in like 1938 that, he said, while nations may go to war, it's always arts and culture that unites us. And that was a thing that cemented and solidified this common humanity, and it showed men that indeed we're brothers.
Wow. Wow.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We look forward to following you in the show as you take it all over the world.
You know, yeah. Well, that's my hope. You know, they say that money is the universal language, and you know, but it's not, because they're outdated currencies. You can have 1,000 Prussian francs, 1,000,000 Prussian francs. It's not going to mean anything to you. The international language is arts and culture. It's music.
It is.
It's, you know, it's why this art form that Shakespeare wrote about in the 15th century
Still
is
here.
more prevalent today.
That's
you know, and so it's like it's the oldest profession. I know people say it's prostitution is the oldest profession, but
Nope.
no, it's acting.
Acting is
prostitutes got paid.
further back. Very true.
Thank you again,
Thank you,
Stogie.
Stogie.
Thank you very much. Stick around. We'll be back with more Santa Monica on Stage.
At the Boys and Girls Club of Santa Monica, we build long-lasting relationships with our kids.
Love. Friendships.
Support. Trust.
Learning.
I know. Fun.
All that and a lot more.
We're not just a club. We're family.
Great futures start here.
Paul, have you ever done a solo show?
I have, actually.
You have?
I did, many years ago.
About what?
Well, I did several, and the first of which was I was actually a transsexual. It was mind-bending.
Oh.
It's true. You asked.
I've always been afraid because there's nobody to relate to. You're all by yourself out there in the audience.
Well, that's true, but it's sometimes fun to cheat when you can respond to the audience and they're like that extra person.
Wow. Maybe I'll have to try it sometime. So I understand that you juggle. We've had these balls sitting on the table in the bowl since the very beginning of the show, and now I know what they're there for.
The pressure's on.
The pressure is on.
All right. Oh, no, this will work. Huh?
Wow.
Give it up for the guy who can juggle, huh?
Bravo.
Right?
Juggle and do a solo show.
Thank you, Mom and Dad, for paying for my college education.
I am impressed.
Thank you.
I can't juggle, and I've never done a solo show either. But it was really awesome to see both of them. And I've seen both of the shows, Shelly-Ann Stogie, and they put all their 100% emotion into the shows, and audiences love them.
When we first met Shelley, I really thought Hebrew Hillbilly, she was going to bring out a banjo. I was a little disappointed not seeing a banjo.
Well, she does not play the banjo, but she sings 15 songs in the show. And Stogie ages from age 5 to age 70.
That's
in
impressive. That is such a powerful show,
It
too.
is, wow.
I really look forward to seeing that.
Yes, indeed, and I hope you will all see those shows too. That's our show for today. Every week we are continuing our journey, learning more about the arts groups that make Santa Monica's cultural world so rich.
We look forward to seeing you next time as we introduce you to a few more of our friends here at Santa Monica on Stage.